Good morning, everyone. Today I will be discussing a proposed amendment to the lab abstract assessment in exercise physiology. The lab abstract is worth 30%, and students are required to conduct a VO2 max protocol to assess oxygen uptake during graded exercise. Students then write a 300-word abstract describing the protocol and results and represent their data through figures, tables, and calculations. This task represents the culmination of the practical components of the subject and has two main purposes. At this point of the semester, students have already discussed respiratory function and the VO2 max test within the lectures. Therefore, they are asked to demonstrate their knowledge of the physiology in the context of their experimental results. Students have also developed skills in accurate and reliable data collection, analysis, and communication through the practicals. Therefore, they are demonstrating the practical skills associated with experimental research. This most closely aligns with the socio-constructivist theory of learning as described by Mary James. It is a collaborative task as students are working together to solve problems that arise and ensure accurate and reliable data collection in class. However, students are asked to write the abstract independently and therefore construct their own understanding of the protocol and how their results compare with the literature. This assessment aligns well with the frameworks that guide learning outcomes and assessment design in higher education. The Higher Education Standards Framework requires students to demonstrate both specific and generic knowledge and skills. For this task, students demonstrate a specific understanding of the VO2 max test and respiratory physiology, but more broadly, they demonstrate their understanding and skills in experimental design, analysis, and communication, which are applicable across physiology research and other scientific disciplines. In alignment with the requirements for the bachelor degree established in the Australian Qualifications Framework, students also demonstrate cognitive and communication skills associated with the gathering of results and writing scientifically. There are combined elements of collaboration through performing the experiment as groups and taking responsibility for independent work in the writing of the abstract. The science threshold learning outcomes, as dictated by the Australian Council of Deans of Science, require that students demonstrate strong ability to critically analyse and solve scientific problems, be effective science communicators, and take accountability for their own work, all of which are achieved through successful completion of the task. These frameworks clearly inform the learning outcomes for the subject, the two of which are being specifically assessed in this task are seen here. This assessment strongly aligns with the theory of constructive alignment in curriculum development, as described by John Biggs. There is a strong correlation between what students are intending to learn, the learning outcomes, and what knowledge and skills they are being asked to demonstrate through the assessment task, all informed by these broader frameworks. The learning content of the practicals and the lectures then supports these learning outcomes and assessment. There are a few challenges with the current design of the task. Students are able to achieve a passing grade in the subject without passing this assessment. Therefore, we cannot state with certainty whether all students have achieved all of the learning outcomes. There is also a lack of regular assessment of practical knowledge throughout the semester. This assessment can be a source of anxiety, which could result from a lack of familiarity with this specific style of scientific writing, but also the delay in commencing and submitting this task until quite late in the semester, as seen in this timeline. To address these, the amendment I propose is adding a formative assessment task earlier in the semester with the same structure, but based on an earlier practical investigating heart rate variability during breathing. This would be a compulsory task with a 0% weighting due at the beginning of week 8, as seen in this suggested structure. The purpose of the task is to provide an opportunity for students to practice their writing and data analysis and receive both individual and group feedback that can be applied to the final summative task. Students can therefore progressively build towards demonstrating their experimental skills and demonstrate their knowledge of physiology in a different experimental context. This task will enhance the student experience by providing an opportunity for students to practice writing and representing data in a task with no formal grading, and then receiving feedback in advance of the summative task, which will hopefully reduce anxiety. It also produces more consistency in activities that build familiarity and confidence with experimental design and scientific communication. According to James's description of socio-constructivist based assessment, there should be an emphasis on making tasks collaborative. By adding in this additional task, students are encouraged to solve problems and discuss outcomes as a group, therefore forming connections with their colleagues earlier in the semester. Sample, McDowell, and Montgomery described that when students find a task meaningful and valuable, it is more likely to encourage a level of effort that will facilitate learning. Adding in this formative task encourages earlier engagement with the learning process as they are provided a task that directly contributes to achieving the learning outcomes. It also provides direct guidance and feedback on their work they can apply later in the summative task. The formative task also gives an opportunity to engage with understanding specific elements of the practical activities, such as the use of specific software or techniques, in more detail. With regards to learning, the addition of the formative task would provide an opportunity earlier in the semester for students to demonstrate their progress in achieving the intended learning outcomes and use the feedback to ensure that in their final summative task, they are able to demonstrate these. Therefore, the subject as a whole would more closely align with the element of the higher education standards framework that requires teaching and learning activities to enable progressive achievement of the learning outcomes. From a teaching point of view, we can also use the feedback from this task, such as areas where students may be struggling, to guide the focus of in-class activities and enhance student learning. As we can see, the lab abstract in its current iteration closely aligns with the frameworks guiding learning and assessment in teaching and provides an opportunity for students to demonstrate both knowledge and skill development in correlation with the intended learning outcomes. However, adding this formative task would enhance the student learning experience and engagement across the semester. With this in mind, the question that I would like to pose is whether formative assessment is a valuable addition to student learning and experience within sport and exercise science, and if so, how can this be integrated on a course-wide basis? I look forward to hearing your insights. Thank you.